Hello, welcome to another episode of Through My Eyes. And as always, I'm your host, Cerebróne. Today I'm talking about AFCON 2002, which was a very hot tournament. I remember that when the tournament started, there was a lot of talk about how it was really hot. And maybe that's why goals weren't coming, because it was in Mali. It was held in Mali, and at that time of the year, Mali was very hot. Like, the players were actually talking about it, and there was a lot of talk about the heat and how it might affect the quality of the football that we would see at the tournament. But the first set of games, the first round of games, there were no goals. I remember that in South Africa's group, South Africa was there, Ghana was there, Burkina Faso as well. And I think, what was the last team? I don't remember. Anyway, it was 0-0s. Like, first game 0-0, second game 0-0. And even when they started the second round of games, South Africa played another 0-0. So in Nigeria's group, we had Algeria, we had Mali, the hosts, and we had Liberia. And I remember in Nigeria's group that Liberia were actually very impressive. Liberia had given us a lot of trouble during qualifying for the World Cup, for the 2002 World Cup. George Weah was troublesome, and his boys, they were very troublesome. And we almost didn't make it. So we're coming to rekindle that rivalry. But Liberia were actually very impressive around that period. And in the tournament, they actually led against Mali and almost won. It was George Weah that scored. They almost won that game before Keita got the goal that a late equalizer for them. It was almost an embarrassment for the host country, because, I mean, everyone had trooped in. This was like the first game, and they expected the boys to show up, especially against Liberia, who they felt they were better than, and that didn't quite work out like that, because Liberia were actually good. Then we played against Algeria. Agawa popped up with a goal, but it was a very, very, very it was a quite forgettable game, I think. But also we did create a lot of chances. Kanu was looking for a goal, but he had not scored at AFCON. He didn't score at the previous tournament, so he really wanted to score. And if I remember correctly, he had a lot of chances, but he just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. Then we faced Mali in a very boring game that ended 0-0. Very forgettable, and it was in the spirit of the tournament, lacking goals. But then the group with South Africa came alive in the second round of games. Well, after South Africa had drawn 0-0, because the Burkina Faso team scored, and then there were a bunch of goals in the group for the rest of the tournament, for the rest of the group phase, right? But then in Cameroon's group, Cameroon 1-0, then they beat Togo 3-0. And it was just, it was a bit boring. The fact that we're in singles, but it was Mboma that was like their match winner in the first two games. And that was for that. So a lot was going on at the tournament. It wasn't particularly lit up. It wasn't as exciting as to the 2000 tournament, because that particular tournament had a lot of goals and a lot of action, and I think the quality of play was just all around better in 2000 than in 2002. 2002 was a bit so the first round of games, I remember also there was DR Congo in this tournament, and a few other teams. Senegal's group had Senegal, Tunisia, Egypt. It was a pretty tough group, but Senegal weren't even scoring as well. 1-0, 1-0, 0-0, but they got 7 points. But nobody was really taking note of Senegal, even though they were just quietly going through and getting through and, going where they were going. And everybody was just not noticing that this team, there was something special about this team. But anywho, then the quarterfinals came and Nigeria were still not very impressive. I remember our third game in the group stage against Liberia. Liberia actually scored a goal that was wrongly disallowed. But then also, we should have gotten a penalty. But we labored for a goal. And we eventually got the goal that we were looking for. But it was very dire again. And everybody kept wondering, what's wrong with this team? They're not as impressive as we expect. And where are the goals? Yes, we know that Mali is hot right now, and they're saying that the heat is causing the players not to play at like their best level. But where are the goals? Right? Like, where are the goals? And Liberia actually held their own. I think we had a lot more chances, but they held their own and did very well. But it wasn't to be for them, and they were out. They actually drew their first two games. They led against Mali and ended up drawing. They led against Algeria and ended up drawing. And then Nigeria beat them. So it was kind of a good showing. But unfortunately, it didn't pan out well for them because they couldn't defend the lead to save their lives. So Nigeria got through. And Nigeria got out of that group with Mali. Ghana and South Africa got through. And Cameroon got through. Senegal got through. Egypt got through. Egypt were to play Cameroon. And yeah. So we got into the knockout stages. And Nigeria had to play Ghana. And that game, it was Garbalawa that got us through. Again, it wasn't impressive. And I think at that point, we started to realize that something was up with this team. Something was going on in the background. To be very honest with you, or to be fair, every tournament that Nigeria go to, there's always something going on. Like, do we ever not have issues? There's always some internal issues. Someone is arguing with someone over, match bonuses or the treatment of the players or welfare or something. Right from when they go to training camp, ahead of the tournament, there's always something. There's always an issue. And it happened again here, but we didn't even know the extent or the enormity of the problem until much later. We didn't realize it until we got knocked out, really. But yeah. So we were to face Ghana, and the game was very forgettable. Another very dire game. I remember I was very, very bored. I was very bored. Like, what are we even doing here, man? And it was just a pretty forgettable game. Balawa came through, and we were in the semi-finals, and we're just going to, just push in and get into the final. And we're already thinking about Cameroon. And this is something I mentioned in the previous episode. Like, we were to play first. Cameroon had not even played or made the final, but they were playing Mali. Even though Mali were hosts, we just felt like, yeah, they'll beat Mali. We will beat Senegal, they beat Mali. Yeah, because we were both favorites, to be fair. Get into the final and we rekindle that rivalry and we get back our pound of flesh or whatever. And it didn't quite happen like that because we couldn't even beat Senegal. Senegal actually played long periods of that game with a red card. They were a man down. And we couldn't beat them. Once again, they led. And it took Agawa for us to get back into that game. Very, very late in the game. It was actually almost towards the end. Like, at some point, it was like, it was done. Like, we can't get out of it. Just like in 2000, like, we can't get past this team. Who are these guys? And they were a man down. Like, who are these guys? And then I remember that Uruma came on. Uruma actually replaced the Okocha. And Uruma, who is remembered for that game, or who is remembered as the guy who missed the penalty later on, which cost us that game and was abused for it, was actually the guy that changed the game for us. Uruma came on and delivered a stupendous performance. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but he was our best player on the pitch when he came on. And he was the one that played the pass that led to our equalizer by Agawa. I think it was Lamin Diata that was trying to protect the ball, and Agawa just stole in, and just because Agawa was someone who chased lost causes. And that was the same way he had, scored or found a way against Senegal in the previous edition. Agawa was a hustler. He would always find a way, and he did this time around once again. And Uruma was actually balling out. And then we entered extra time. Now we're up against 10 men. Extra time. We didn't have the pressure of trying to find what do you call it now? An equalizer. We didn't have that pressure of we're almost getting eliminated. So we could have just settled down and done better. And we did not. Instead, Senegal scored again. Salif Diao. In the first goal was Papa Diop, rest in peace. And this time it was Salif Diao. What you just remember from it is that Shorumu was scrambling. But again, another issue was that Shorumu had a concussion or something like that. It collided the previous game. He wasn't supposed to play this game, but they made him play this game because they had no faith in the backup goalkeepers. Murphy Akonji, I cannot remember who the second guy was, but if you watch the third place game, which Murphy Akonji was the goalkeeper in, you watch the third place game against Mali, you would understand why they had no faith in Murphy Akonji and the backup goalkeepers in general, because he was all over the place. And everybody was like, oh, I see why. But then again, how do you carry backup goalkeepers to a tournament when you have no faith in them? Is it that there were no goalkeepers anywhere in the entire, country? I just don't think that they searched enough. And that's part of the problem. Because Shorumu should not have been in that game at all. It was risky for him, and it was not great for us because I don't think he was at his best. And also, the first goal was kind of his fault from the corner kick because he was in no man's land, coming out to claim the cross and then not even getting anywhere close to it. And this second goal, he was just scrambling, trying to get to the ball. The ball wasn't even hit well. It was miskicked. And that memory is just sad. But anyway, then Uruma, we also know Uruma got to take a penalty because Kanu won a penalty just for the end of the game, just for the end of extra time, and Uruma was the only one who stepped up to take it. It was reported later that nobody wanted to take the penalty, and so Uruma stepped up. He had been having a good game. He was in high spirits, and I always felt like he took a great penalty. Well, they say a penalty is only good if you score. I get that, but Uruma's penalty actually was good. The goalkeeper went the wrong way and he hit, and we lost the game. And Uruma was, again, that thing I always talk about. It happened with Yakubu in 2010, where a look of embarrassment and that smile, that thing that looks like a smile but isn't really a smile. Benzema, Messi, Yakubu, Uruma, that thing. And Nigerians understand this in every other context until it's football. Then they say the person is smiling. No, he's not smiling. He is obviously in pain and embarrassed and frustrated. And that's the exact look. He was not smiling. And that apparently pissed everybody off more. Why is he smiling? He just blew our chance. They didn't ask why the more senior players refused to take the penalty. They didn't ask why they didn't remember that he was the best player on the pitch for us after he came on, and he was the one that even made us enter extra time in the first place with his pass to Agawa. And yeah, it was just all around a mess. And the fallout from that tournament changed Nigerian football for the next few years, because there were a bunch of players that didn't play for the Nigerian Super Eagles again after the tournament was over. The fallout was huge. They disbanded the team, everybody. And then I remember that after that, First Sonic Binde invited this long list of players. And I still remember looking at the list. Saze was on that list, and a bunch of players. I still remember the list, very long list, ahead of the World Cup. But anyway, in the third place match against Mali, Yakubu scored the goal that gave us the bronze medal. And we wore white and green. So that thing about us wearing green from the previous tournament, which was why we apparently lost to Cameroon. Well, here we wore green against Senegal and we lost. So, not that important. So Cameroon defeated Mali comprehensively. It was a beating. That night we were so annoyed watching Cameroon beat Mali, because it was like, we could have been there. We could have faced them in the final. Let me tell you what would have happened in the final. They would have beaten us again. Yes. If we got to that final, they would have beaten us again, because we were not impressive all tournament. I don't think we had a single good game. Maybe against Algeria in the first game, where we kind of created a lot of chances, but we were not impressive at all. It was very dire. And we're also maybe not as strong as Cameroon in terms of the team as a unit. Cameroon as a unit were very formidable. We were beefing them, so we downplayed everything they did, but they were very formidable as a group, as a unit. And they were very hard to beat, which was why the name Indomitable Lions was really a thing. So great tournament. And in the final, it was Cameroon versus Senegal. I was rooting for Senegal. First of all, obviously, I didn't want Cameroon to take another African Cup of Nations, but also I loved the story of Senegal, how they had come into that tournament, especially against the background of what they did in 2000. And it just looked like they deserved so much more, because they actually balled out. And the last penalty in the penalty shootout against Cameroon in the final, because the game ended 0-0, went to extra time 0-0, and then it went to penalties. And the last penalty was taken by Cisse. I remember Elijah Diouf missed his penalty. He went wide, and then he turned and did like this. That memory is always in my head. And Rigobert Song was supposed to come and win it for Cameroon. He had the last penalty, score, and Cameroon were champions, and he missed. And I felt a little bit excited about that, because he wanted to do what he did in 2000 when he took the last penalty and won it for them. And I was so happy after what he did to us that, this didn't work out for him. In fact, that was the little bit of victory I took from it, even though he eventually won. But then Aliou Cisse, captain of Senegal, who is now their coach and delivered the AFCON in the last edition, took his penalty. It was a straight penalty, and I remember, it was saved like this. And Cameroon were champions. And I was so upset. I felt so bad for Senegal, because I think they had a fine tournament, and they barely conceded. In fact, I think Agawa's goal was the only goal they conceded the entire tournament, because they came out of their group with a 2-0 thing, and then they won their quarterfinals, and they won their quarterfinal game without conceding. So this was the first time they were conceding all tournament. And Agawa was the first time they conceded all tournament, and then they ended up losing the trophy. losing out on trophy to Cameroon. It was sad to see. And this was also the tournament where Cameroon wore armless, which is insane to me. It was a Puma design and it was armless. And for the World Cup, FIFA said you cannot wear this, you have to wear sleeves. But at AFCON, they actually played without sleeves. You need to go back and watch that nonsense. It was terrible. It was trash. Very, very trash. But also, I felt like it gave them extra advantage because it was hot. It was hot in Mali, and they were the only ones who weren't feeling it as much because of what they were wearing, which was like protecting them from the effects of the heat compared to everybody else. So it felt like an unfair advantage for us. But anyway, I was a hater, so everything felt like, Cameroon are cheating everybody. That's how I looked at everything. But in fairness, they were actually a very formidable team and truly indomitable until they went to the World Cup and were very poor. Yes, I'm a hater. Anyway, that was Mali 2002. And side note, there was something that happened during the tournament. It was the bomb blast of 2002 at the Keja cantonment, and I experienced that. And it's one of the memories of the tournament itself for me because it was January 27, 2002, and there was a bomb blast. We displaced from our house. We ran. I've told that story on Twitter before. It was a very long night, and one of the things that gave me a feeling of calm after the storm, because I thought I was going to die that day. One of the things that gave me a feeling of calm was the show later in the night, the AFCON show later in the night called Inside Mali 2002. I can't remember the host again, but I think it was Felix Okube of blessed memory and Laurent Kel. And they were inside the camp, they were talking to the players and all of that, and it was just so nice to see like the behind the scenes, and that helped me to relax because my anxiety was over the roof. It was a very, very difficult day, a Sunday, very difficult, very scary. I thought I was going to die. The bombs kept going off, overhead, and man, it was crazy. But anyway, great tournament. Not very whatever, but good tournament. And good time.